In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a life update on where I've been the past year or so. I realize I've not been making YouTube videos, but I'm back now. I'm going to give you the scoop as to what exactly happened. I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on Age of Sigmar 4th edition, early doors, my experience at Feud on the Fens a few weeks ago, as well as going over my list choice for this weekend at Blackout. Lots to cover, let's get to it. So excited to be back. Let's go. We're going to start things today by just very briefly going over what happened to me, why I disappeared from YouTube for a year. The short answer is my father's health. Over the past 18 months, he's been living with Parkinson's. It culminated in earlier this year, him unfortunately passing away. And as his health deteriorated, as I saw my mother have to spend more and more of her time just being a dedicated carer to him, as all of these things were happening, as well as a period of difficulty for my disabled twins, whom I care for, I had to strip back on some of the things that I was doing with my free time. I just didn't have the energy for it. I still wanted to continue playing Warhammer because I think that the community of Warhammer is fantastic. I love going away to events, taking off my dad hat for a bit, and just being Mike again. And days before we had a funeral for my father, I went to Brothers War team event, and it was just fantastic. I considered dropping altogether, but I wanted to be there for my team, and I also wanted to lean on them for emotional support. And everyone who spoke to me that weekend had such kind things to say, very supportive. I cannot stress just how good the Age of Sigmar community is, and I wanted to thank them for that. In addition, you may have noticed I am no longer writing for Goonhammer. I'm still going to be creating content. It's going to be on this YouTube channel for the foreseeable. I've got some really exciting ideas I want to share with you on what we're going to be doing with that space. I'm going to be a bit more picky about what I decide to cover. So rather than going over every single event that's 28 or more players, I'm going to be picking over, the events that I think are significant. I'm going to be going over the lists that I find are significant. The things that are fresh, they're new, they're exciting, and they are innovating, right? I'm going to be bringing a lot of that same flavor that I was doing when I was writing competitive innovations, but in this format, I'm going to maybe spend a bit more time discussing individual lists and curate what I'm talking about a little bit more. That's not to say that I won't be spending some time to really celebrate the successes of individual players. I think it's one of the most fantastic elements of competitive innovations on Goonhammer, and it's something that I heartily encourage everyone to still go to that website and still read that content and still check out all of their coverage of war games, because I still think that they are absolutely amazing in this space, especially the written content, which, in 2024 is getting harder and harder to actually find anything that's decent in that space, especially because AI garbage is everywhere. In addition, you'll notice that there is a new coat of paint. I wanted to take the opportunity when I was away from this channel to start to learn some video editing skills, improve how things look, presentation, and I also did a bit of a rebrand. Six-Sided Hive is inspired by the club that I helped run, MAD, Manchester Academy of Dice, which also uses the B branding. If you've ever been to Manchester in England, you know how closely tied the B iconography is with our cultural identity, and I wanted to keep some of that spirit. I also think that fantasy wargaming, while an acceptable name, wasn't ever really something I was happy with. It just happened to be the best solution for a name and branding that I could find at the time. That said, this will be a experimental process. I'm looking to still improve things. We've improved the visual quality of the video camera. I'm using a better microphone. I've been working on recording settings to hopefully get a better quality product for yourselves. I'm going to continue to iterate and improve on this as we go. If you have any feedback or any ideas that you have in terms of what you want to see covered by myself, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. This is very much a collaborative process. I want to give you guys the content that you wish to see. Like, do you want tier lists? Do you want me to spend more time doing weird and wonderful list design? Do you want me to make it more of a diary project? I am going to be listening to everything that you guys have to say, taking it on board and incorporating it where possible into this channel. Let's change gears a bit, I think. I may end up doing a broader video on this, but the short version is Age of Sigmar 4th edition. What do I think about it? I think that the core rules is a really exciting set that is going to be great to see sort of grow and evolve over the next few years. That's not to say that it's without its problems. I think that in what is a remarkably clean, clear, and refreshingly light rule set, the manifestation section sticks out like a sore thumb, because the distinction between static and non-static, it counts as a unit for certain things but not others. It's just like I get why they did it. They want to hang the manifestations on the unit framework because a lot of that sort of design language is similar, but they want to give it a meaningful distinction because it is not the same thing. But one of the problems that is created is there are a lot of situations where you have to refer to, a 10 bullet point list for what it counts as a unit for the purposes of, and then you're like, also, if it's a static one, you got to check out this other separate list. I don't know, just clunky to me. What they gained by making them not units, they lost somewhat in having to refer to that rule set and cause some issues that way. That's not to say that I don't like the manifestation system as a whole. I actually think that once you've learned those rules, it is actually a really, really good bit of complexity to add on to the rule system. But it also means that for players who are new to Age of Sigmar or new to 4th edition, there's this learning curve as you get to grips with it, and a lot of opportunities for feel bad moments. I don't think anyone has ever been pleased when they've come across Soul Snare Shackles for the first time, being cast 18 inches away, tagging their unit in the deployment zone and making it difficult to score their Caesar center that they picked for their first turn. Just an example, but you get the idea, right? I think that 4th edition is going to be absolutely fantastic because we have such a solid bedrock to build from. But I'll be interested to see how they tweak things over the next few months. We have very obvious glaring balance issues with certain factions, and I think it's to be expected. As someone who was playing Warhammer 40,000 in 8th edition, and I saw what Index Hammer was like for that, when they changed the core fundamentals from 7th edition so much it necessitated a rewrite of all of the rules all at once. They stripped back the complexity, which is what they've done for 4th edition AoS, because there are too many moving parts to change all of these things all at once and expect the same level of depth in terms of richness of thematic design, of rules, of everything that makes a faction unique. That said, I do think they did a very good job in doing what they could with a more stripped back set of rules to create something that is still very distinctly them. So ogres still feel like ogres, Lumineth is still bullshit, so on and so forth. It also means that there are some points or war scrolls that are just straight up jank. We all know that Hex Wraiths are going to get nerfed, and there are a lot of armies where it seems like the best tactic is spamming their most efficient unit and then sort of wrapping whatever 2 to 3 heroes are best for that unit and then calling it good. That's to be expected. It will improve over time. A couple of weeks ago, I went to Feud and Fens. I had a fantastic time. The SYM guys ran a fantastic event. It was the first time I've been to one of theirs, and I'm planning on going back next year. And if you are someone who saw their posting on socials and was curious about it, I heartily recommend you follow them on Twitter and try and get a ticket for next year, because it was a really good vibes. Like, everyone that weekend was on the same page. We all just wanted to wrap our head around 4th edition Age of Sigmar. It was a pretty good venue. There was a fantastic outdoor area to sit between rounds, and considering the time of year, it's warm summer, I really appreciated being able to sit outside and just take in the sun when you've been cooped up inside playing Warhammer for a few hours. overall, I just had an absolute blast. My expectations for the weekend were simply to get a better mastery of the core rules. I didn't really have any ambition in terms of what my win-loss rate would be or what have you. That said, I was really thrilled to go 4-1, 6 out of about 60 players, and most importantly, win Best Sporting, which I think Best Sports is one of the best aspects of this hobby in terms of the event space, because ultimately Warhammer is about a collaborative narrative, right? You and your opponent are coming together at the table to enjoy the rule set together. If one person is deliberately trying to game the system or they are bringing the wrong attitude to the game, then you can affect not just your enjoyment, but your opponent's. And, you know, when you've spent a couple £100 between tickets, food, travel, accommodation to show up there for that weekend, I think it's really important that players are on the same page in terms of what kind of game that they want to play. And I think it's really important that both players go away from that game feeling that they just had a nice time, first and foremost. I think that the competitive spirit within the UK scene is fantastic, while also maintaining a strong sense of camaraderie. And in a field where there are so many nice people, like, to win Best Sports is something that I am thrilled by. To this day, I'm more proud of now having 2 sportsmanship awards than I am about the fact that I came second at Mancunian Carnage. So, what did I pick? What was I playing with at Feud and the Fence? What am I playing with this weekend? I decided to go for the Dad Bots, Ogor Mawtribes. The reason for that is pretty straightforward. I think that the lists that you can run with ogres right now, you can strip back the number of war scrolls you're using, which helps in sort of the streamlining process of playing the game. But also the war scrolls that I am using are very powerful, they're flexible, and I tend to have reasonable game into pretty much everything, including Nighthorn, which I think is very important right now. That's not to say the army is without its weaknesses, but as we'll see when I'm discussing my list choice for Blackout, I think that we have a pretty good core to approach any singles event for at least the next few weeks. Now, important distinction here, we are not running the exact same list as what I ran at Feud and the Fens. The Frostlord and Stonehorn here in my Feud and the Fens list was a 2nd Slaughtermaster and 6 more Gluttons for a total of 30 in the list. In this one, I'm only running 24, but we'll get to why I picked a Frostlord in a second. What is Ogor Mawtribes about in 4th edition, briefly? It is a fast army, it is applying a lot of pressure, it is looking to grind out isn't the right word because it's not a recursion style army, but what it is trying to do is apply a lot of early pressure through turn 1 charges. Ideally, you're pinning your opponent in place in their deployment zone, denying battle tactics and primary scoring by restricting the ways in which they can operate. I'm running Prophets of the Gulping God, which gives me +1 to casting rolls. I have 2 wizards, 1 Slaughtermaster, and a Butcher. They are both 1-cast wizards, so I get +1 to casting, which is good because they got a great spell lore. They've got a -1 to hit spell, 18-inch range, which is fantastic in Age of Sigmar when a lot of stuff is now hitting on 4's base, ogres included. They have a +1 to combat attacks spell for until my next hero phase, which is another fantastic spell because of the high quality of attacks that this army is putting out. We're split across 3 regiments. The Slaughtermaster and Butcher I'm sort of going to discuss together because they're both the support core of this list, as it were. The Slaughtermaster sits in my back lines, and if my Gutbuster units are killing things in combat wholly within 18 inches of it, then he gets a Grizzly Remain point. I can spend 1 or more Grizzly Remains points in a hero phase, mine or my opponents, to give a unit wholly within 12 inches, either a 5-up ward or +1 attack until the end of the turn, which is fantastic because that's after your opponent has picked their battle tactics. So let's say they pick Slay the Entourage. I'll go, okay, bet. I'm going to put a 5-up ward on those Iron Guts. Have fun trying to score that. Really good, cheap support piece. The Butcher gives a bubble of Run and Charge, which Gutbusters are movement 6. They get +2 to run rolls while they have not yet used the Feast on Flesh battle trait. What this effectively means is if I use at the double to set their run roll to a 6, they're moving 12 inches, then charging. If I naturally roll a 6, I get to add 2 to that roll, so I can move 14 inches and charge. When you consider that most deployments, you're 18 inches away from your opponent's deployment zone, this means that you're looking at, 4 to 6 inch charges a lot of the time, turn 1, which is fantastic. The core of the list is Gluttons, so we have 4 units of 6. They are 24 wounds, 25 attacks, 4s, 2s, Ren 1, 2 damage. They're just a really solid, efficient, versatile unit that is fast. It hits quite hard. It is not poor quality attacks. Wounding on 2s is fantastic, but it is in enough quantity, and you hit that break point, especially if you're able to, stack up either the Grizzly Remains point buff from the Slaughtermaster or the +1 attack spell, where they can basically lift most unreinforced hammers in the game. If I need something chunkier than that, then I have the 8 Iron Guts in my General's Regiment. There's a lot of discussion within the Age of Sigmar Ogres community about what is the best Ogres list. I'm not here to say that I think the Iron Guts are straight up better than Gluttons. I don't think that they are better than Gluttons, to be clear. I think Gluttons are more efficient. However, there is more to list design than simply what is the most efficient War Scroll. I'm going to max out what I can of that War Scroll. The trade-off that you get for less efficiency from Iron Guts is utility and it is potency. So they are Ren 2 damage free rather than Ren 1 damage 2. A unit of 8 is putting out 3 times. It's putting out 25 attacks. Higher Ren, so you're better able to deal with higher save stuff like Slaves of Darkness, Stormcast, Hero Monsters, and so on. The important thing here is you get that Fights Twice ability, and you essentially hitting like a rock gut. That Fights Twice ability, in combination with the improved combat range of units in Age of Sigmar with the 3 inches, means that on a turn that you can charge, you go, okay, I'm going to charge, I'm going to declare in the fight phase that they're going to fight twice. Yes, the second activation is strikes last, but you activate with them first, lift the unit they're in combat with. They're now outside of combat with anything. End of combat, I get to activate again, pal in 3 inches, because I charge that turn, doesn't matter if I'm not in combat anymore, and then hit what's behind them. I had a game at Feud in the Fens a few weeks ago where I was playing against the Nighthawk list, and the Iron Guts in the space of a single turn killed, I think it was 4 Hex Wraiths to finish off the unit, 10 Dread Scythe Harridans. They then piled in and activated again and killed Alinda and finished off a Lord Executioner. I paid 480 points to run the Iron Guts, which is a quarter of my army, but I delivered a devastating blow. I do have to babysit them. They're on a 5-up save. If your opponent gets to them, they can pretty easily kill them, but they don't serve as the initial wave. They will sit in a wildwood. They will be the second wave behind the Gluttons. They're coming in to engage when battle lines are met and basically deliver the haymaker, right? The list is aggressive. It's applying a lot of pressure, but it's not looking to put everything into its opponent's face. Sometimes the correct thing to do is just create a little Doom lozenge where you've wrapped the Iron Guts with your Gluttons. You're pushing it inexorably up the board into the middle, taking the center, and your opponent is forced to deal with the Gluttons before they can even get to the Iron Guts. And in the meantime, they make a fantastic countercharge target, as well as, if need be, a break glass in case of emergency hammer. The Butcher has gruesome trophies, which is just a source of +1 to hit against enemy monsters and heroes. It's not useful in a lot of matchups, but certain ones where they're running hero monsters, it's obviously fantastic. Frostlord and Stonehorn in this 3rd regiment here is a pet unit, I will admit. I do not think that the Frostlord and Stonehorn is a great choice. I think it is an interesting and worthwhile tactical consideration, but it is not, you are giving up a significant amount to run this because I'm dropping a 2nd Slaughtermaster for redundancy, as well as a unit of 6 Gluttons, which is, well, it's 24 wounds right there. In 4th edition, the Frostlord has lost its ward. It is not quite as fast as it was before. It's still got the pretty decent rampage. I think it's been tweaked where it's now D3 mortal wounds and you can move 2d6 inches, passing through enemy models. The only restriction is you must end that move in combat. Yes, the Frostlord is fragile, but you can very easily have a scenario where you have him behind your army or off to the side, often as like a flanking piece on their weak flank. And this is important. Ideally, you want it to be on their weak side because you want to be able to go, okay, your opponent's made their charges in their turn. I'm going to count charge, tag the corner of their charging unit, do D3 mortal wounds to them. Well, shitty D3s because on a 1 you fail. Then move 2d6 inches. Ideally, you're ignoring the unit discharge and going behind them into their back lines, and as long as you get within, you roll high enough, you can get within 3 inches of, let's say, their Lady Olinda in the back, or their Great Unclean One, their support pieces, and you kill them. One of the things that I'm doing is taking risks when I'm practicing in order to ascertain just how much risk I can expose the Frostlord to and expect it to survive. I think that it is a unit that is going to flourish in the mid game. You ideally are not really committing it in the early game. You want it sort of behind your lines or very off to the side, scoring, take the lands or secure the flanks. And you commit it once stuff is tied up by the gluttons. I've given it Touched by the Winter to make it a priest, so you got access to the Mortal Wound Bomb prayer, as well as the ability to make terrain obscuring for the remainder of the battle, which is a really, really important tool to have access to when your army is 5-up save pretty much across the board, and the army otherwise has a innate weakness to shooting because there's no appreciable recursion mechanics beyond just heals, like little minor heals. The Frostlord is also quite fast, 10-inch base movement, and they have a prayer to have run and charge, so you can create a situation where it can really tear up the board. Let's say you take a 7 as your charge roll and 7 as your rampage movement. You're going 14 inches plus 6 from at the double, 20 inches, 30 inches, add another 3 on for the combat range, and you could be hitting something, 33 inches away. There's a lot of dice involved in that sequence, and your opponent can interact with that, but it's more so to illustrate how fast the unit can be, and I'm really excited to see how it ends up working out in a competitive event space outside of practice games, because one of the things that I did want to have when I was running my original list, which was 30 gluttons, was something that is able to hit hard, counterpunch, and sort of go on assassination missions. Because the Frostlord is much better in combat now. It punches harder than it has in the past. I'm curious to see how it goes. Like I said, it's a pet unit. We may make a video next week where I am telling you, unfortunately, it was a bit shit, but I want to give it a go, because I think that there is room for innovation within Ogre's lists, even within this sort of spam hammer time that we find ourselves in. The faction terrain is the Maw Pit. It's a fantastic source of chip mortals. Essentially, in each hero phase, up to 3 enemy units within 12 inches or 18 inches if there's a butcher inside. Takes shitty D3 mortal wounds, with adding 1 to the modifier if the unit you're targeting is away from its other friendly units. Just good chip damage, basically, at range, which is useful when this army has no shooting. And then the Manifestation Law, I'm running the Cronspine Incarnate. At the Defense, I was running Morbid Conjurations. A big part of that was because I had 3 casts in the list, because I had 2 Slaughtermasters. Now that I only have 2 casts, I'm realizing, especially because the spell law is fantastic, -1 to hit spell and the +1 attack spell, even the heal and add to the objective control score spell, they're all fantastic pieces. And very often I want to be casting, ideally, both my attack spell and my hit debuff spell each turn, each of my turns anyway, which meant that I don't really have the real estate to be throwing out Shackles or, Grey Tide or Purple Sun. Not that I don't think that Manifestation Law isn't the best. I think it's fucking nuts. It's great. If you've got the opportunity to use it and you don't have a +1 to casting rolls bonus, then you probably want to be morbid, right? But because I have that +1 to cast, I'm curious to see how the Incarnate plays out. I want something that is Because I don't have innate recursion mechanics, I want to be able to put something out onto the board if I'm given first turn that I don't mind losing because, I can summon it again. Because the range on my -1 to hit spell is 18 inches, and if I'm given first turn, which if I'm a free drop list, I very often will not have the decision of whether or not I'm going first. I want to be able to do something meaningful with my spells, right? And the Incarnate is something I can do no matter how far away my opponent is. So I can throw it out, block up a bit of space, try and set up a counter charge opportunity, or simply tighten and restrict the flow of my opponent's units into a more favorable circumstance for myself on the following turn. It's all sort of theoretical. I'm not sure how well it's going to work in practice, but we'll see. One of the reasons that I am running the Incarnate and the Frostlord and Stonehorn is because I've been painting up both units. The Frostlord in particular, I will put it up on the screen here so you can see. I'm really proud with how the paint job came together. And I just really want to use it because I spend so much time on it, right? And that's why we play Warhammer. And I've also been working on the Incarnate here, which, as you can see, is a rogue idol. It's a 3D printed one from Total War. It's not yet finished, as you can see, but I'm really excited to see how it comes together. And I think that the Incarnate as a war scroll is a really fantastic proxy opportunity to use a rogue idol. Yes, it's strictly speaking more of an Orc thing than an Ogre's thing, but I think that there's so much thematic overlap between the Destruction factions, I think it totally works. Anyway, that's the list in a nutshell. Next week, I'll be back from Blackout and give you the rundown on how it went. In terms of how detailed I am, that's going to depend on how much information I retain over the weekend, whether I've taken any decent pictures, whether I remember to. My overall vibes, like let's say I have a really miserable time, I'm probably going to be more inclined to hit it briefly and move on, but I don't expect that will be the case. I think the Firestorm Games venue in Cardiff is fantastic. I've heard really good things about Blackout. I've never been, but I've heard that Chris Tomlin is a wonderful TO, and I'm going to be going down, not without my club. It's just going to be me driving down, but I know enough of the people who are going to be there that I'm sure I'll have a fantastic time. So look for that video next week. My expectations for this weekend are going to be a little bit more than they were for Feud on the Fence, because Feud on the Fence was essentially learn how manifestations work, get 5 games of Warhammer in, get a better mastery of the core rules. For Blackout, ideally, I am looking to top 8. Do I think that this list is capable of doing so? Yes. Do I think that this list is capable of winning outright? If I dodge the Lumineth matchup, I think there's a good chance. If anything is going to derail this opportunity to win the whole thing, it's either going to be my skills or it's going to be the fact that I picked the Frostlord, I guess. It's sort of the weakest part of this list. That said, I really wanted to put that model on the table, so I'm going to bring a pet unit. I basically want another strong top 8 finish because I just want to make it sort of a foregone conclusion that I make the squad for Six Nations next year. And to do that, I need to stack those wins, baby. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that will be it from me for today. I took a fair amount of time at the beginning here to discuss my personal situation, and I'm not going to apologize for that because I think it's important that you guys have the context for why I disappeared from the video content creation space for a while. But I'm back. We're going to see how things go. I'm looking to improve, to iterate, and to refine this process. If you've got any feedback, any criticism, anything that you would like to see done differently by this channel, hit me up. Anyway, that's enough rambling. It's time for you to fuck off and go away. I'll see you next time.